Hello patrons, and here we are making a caliper case out of this piece of old boardwalk. How do you say that, Taylor?
Ipe.
Ipe. It's a piece of
Ipe. It's
Ipe.
Ipe.
I'm here with the guest tonight, Taylor Forrest. It's a piece of Ipe that I got from the Long Beach Boardwalk. Actually, Patrick Reynolds gave me a whole bunch of it. I have about 100 pieces about that big, about 24 inches long. And I decided to kind of do a bandsaw box style. In fact, I actually started this. Do you remember last night, Taylor? I was looking at a line of dovetail boxes with the long dovetail slide.
Okay. I didn't notice, but
I was going to do a long dovetail slide on this, and that was my original intention, right? Even up until about halfway into the video. And I had ways of making it, but I realized how long this piece of wood was. It's just about 18 inches long. So if I was going to have this on my table, I would need 18 inches to the left or to the right of it to open it up. And then it occurred to me that it would be easier just to lift the lid off. And do you see how I'm resawing there?
Mm-hmm.
I'm using the table saw. It goes up 3 inches, and that piece of wood. Oh, right there I'm checking the width of the actual caliper with the dial face on it. I should have got a better picture of that. So right here I'm just making sure that the wood is wide enough to accommodate the dial and everything. But you see how I'm doing resawing? I'm cutting up a little bit at a time. I'm going up a little bit at a time because it just puts less stress on the wood. You don't get burn marks, and you're not putting a lot of stress on the saw itself. So I'm coming up a little bit and cutting from each side. So I initially thought I was going to use all three of those pieces of wood. I actually ended up cutting another piece from the piece in the pile because it ended up getting too skinny once I flattened it all out. So that's the middle piece that's going to actually have the cutout of the dial caliper in there. See what I'm doing? I'm hand painting.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised. I figured that would be so hard and like chippy.
It is. There is a little bit of chip out. There is a little bit of chip out, but those curls are from the scraper, the card scraper.
Gotcha.
So this type of wood is very tarry outy, and it's also extremely hard. It's almost like working with a hard plastic.
But it's nice. The grain is straight.
The grain is straight, but like I said, it really chips out. You'll notice some chip out by the end, but there's really not much I could do. So here I'm going to bandsaw this out. I certainly could have taken the time to make a CNC file and all that other stuff, but then I would have got people yelling at me. And then just to do it one time, it's easy enough just to bandsaw it out. And then I realized I forgot to put a loopy hole for the fingers. And right there, watch, edit. There was an edit right there. It's because I had to change the blade. The minute I entered the wood, I realized the blade was going to be just too dull for it. So right at that little jump edit, I put in a new blade. And I actually should have cut from the other side of the line, and I wouldn't have had to come back out and start again. I could have gone completely around, not be concerned about the arm of the bandsaw on my left side. And I was still kind of fantasizing about doing the dovetail box. So right here, that's why I cut both sides of this. You see, I cut the side on the right, now I cut the side on the left, so that they still remain parallel and there's no worry about the width of the blade missing on one side versus the other, which was kind of ridiculous because it really would have been imperceptible over that whole length, the width of a saw blade. So here, it's good that I broke it in half anyway, so that I can get at all the saw marks here. See that?
Yeah, nice.
I actually ended up jumping to a real file because that was a piece of sandpaper that was 120. It was a little too, wasn't aggressive enough. So now here I'm just using real straight up files, and then after the file, so there I'm using a real file, and then after the file I use a little bit of sandpaper, and then the card scraper.
Nice. I wouldn't have the patience for that.
It goes a lot quicker than you think. Just looks like a lot right there. But it also, using the file, it smooths everything out. It gets rid of all the highs and the low spots. And then the card scraper just cleans it up and gives you the nice, beautiful grain. This is real easy to do with wood. If I was like click spring, I probably wouldn't have the patience. Now that's just CA glue, and I'm just clamping it together, letting it dry for a few minutes. And then after I let it dry, I go back in and I hand file the seam. So there it is, I let it dry. Now I hand file the seam that bridges across. Ultimately, you can't see that seam at all. The bandsaw seam.
Yeah, nice.
You getting any ideas watching this?
I'm just thinking like you're a really good word worker. I really want you to make me some stuff.
Well, hey, I
I'm
know a
like
guy.
thinking about like, wow, I'm really not that. I'm not talented with wood.
Well, you just don't have enough experience. That's all. You're
I
good
know.
with metal. Now this is epoxy. Some people say when you do ipe, you gotta clean the wood off because it's got like an oil in it. You gotta clean the wood off with like an
I've heard
acetone.
that.
Yeah, so this might let go in 1,000 years from now. So squeeze clamp the hell out of it. Now that bottom piece and the top piece aren't exactly the same girth. The bottom piece is a little wider. So that's why I take all the clamps off and take it over to the disc sander. It's about an hour later. Just making sure that we have a good fit. And we do. Now this is my Oliver Pattern Makers double disc sander, the 32-inch disc sander. And I'm just making sure that the piece I glued to the back and the body of the whole concept are all the same. And this is a trick I see on YouTube a lot. We put tape on both sides and then CA glue them together
Okay.
instead of having like double-sided tape. So now I glued what's going to become the lid to the bottom. And now I'm making sure they're all parallel and clean. You got to be careful using this big disc sander because it leaves big swirl marks on your work. So you got to be careful how you use it. It's a little trick. So I put a bevel on it and then I drew a line. The bevel was just random. So now the second side will have the same bevel because I'm following the line I drew on the table. So now the bevel on both sides is the same. And the top and bottom, I can kind of remember how I was holding it. And so now here, there's a slight bevel on everything. So now I'm breaking it apart. And I don't want to mar the edge, so I'm just gently breaking it apart and using shims to finally split the tape. Now the tape is CA glued together in there. It's like basically splitting double-sided tape. You got to be careful. If you put too much CA glue in there, it'll weep out and get inside the material. So now I'm putting a little tiny chamfer or rabbit, or I guess, is that a rabbit? That's a rabbit, yeah, the width of a blade on both mating surfaces because I'm going to make a little edge so that it has a positive stop when I put one over the other. You see that?
Nice. Yeah.
And you'll notice me pass it over the blade a few times, and the reason I'm doing that, I'm kind of getting a spring cut. So 1, 2, 3. That's to make sure that I actually get the clearance. If I just do it one time, there's still some material there because maybe I'm not pushing hard enough, or the blade reacts to the pressure of the wood and it kind of retracts a little bit. So there you see. The top is the lid and the bottom is the carrying case. And now I'm going to fill that gap with a piece of Wenge. This is that Wenge that Derek gave us, a bunch of strips.
Yeah, it's really pretty. I love it.
Derek got a bunch of the strips from...
Where do you use that?
You'll see. But Derek, by the way, Taylor, you're seeing this for the very first time.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I cut the Wenge to the width. Now I'm cutting it to the girth. And just because it could fall into the cavity behind the blade, I just put a little support plywood. So now I'm cutting that. Just rough cut. I'm making the two long sides long. They're going wider than what I need. I'll sand them into fit. And then the short sides will be trapped in between them. Just using some Starbond CA glue medium, holding it in place for a couple of seconds. I'm using...
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, I'm using the thing just to kind of square it up because it kind of teeter-tottered in that space. Scraping away the excess. Let it dry for a few minutes. Kind of hold it till it starts to do its thing, and then I let go and let it dry.
Why wouldn't you miter that?
Because I'm going for a specific effect, and you'll see it in the end.
Oh, to keep it looking like a long, straight piece?
Well, it's a different color.
Oh, yeah.
So it's going to be a band, a dark band. And in this case, which I kind of had a feeling, but it kind of happened by accident, the logo and that dark band, which you can't explicitly tell the difference in color yet. So now the top of the lid is puzzled onto the bottom, and now I'm just sanding everything to be the exact same width. Because I left everything a little bit proud so that I could sand it all together.
It's pretty. I like that it looks like just a block of wood from
Yeah.
a distance. It's like very deceptive.
And so now this is
Stealthy.
the laser, and I went out to shoot this with 2 GoPros, and neither one of them, the battery worked. My DJI and my GoPro. That's why I was laughing when I came back up from the barn.
Oh, fun.
And I was saying, I went down there with 2 cameras, and they both had dead batteries, so I shot this on my iPhone.
I like the iPhone.
Yeah, it always is great.
It's good.
Great, but I just don't have a tripod for it, so that's why I was
Right.
hand holding it. So I laser etched these, and then when I darkened everything, the logo, the Starrett logo got darker, and then so, of course, did the band around the outside edge, so it made like a nice accent band. So there. And now I take them to the shop. Some jump cut right here. Boom. I take this over and I just scrape off all the burn. Now you'll notice there's from two different pieces of Ipe. The top color happened to be just a little bit more of a richer color, thankfully, than the inside piece. And so you could just barely see the black band. It's kind of a little bit different color. And then when I put some finish on there, you'll see it really pops. And it kind of looks like just like almost like a.
What kind of finish is that?
It's satin finish from Total Boat.
But is it poly?
It's a spar varnish.
Oh, okay.
And I rub it in really hard and kind of dry it.
Finishes that rub in.
Yeah, well, any finish you could rub in as long as it's not too. You could take anything and put a little thinner on it.
It's like gummy, no?
Well, if you thin it, you could rub it in.
Okay.
Just put a little bit of mineral spirits in it.
Yeah, it looks nice. Wow.
And so I just rub it all in with the rag, and again, now you see that dark line darken up a bit. So it's a nice accent to the logo.
It's pretty.
Thank you. And thankfully, like I said, the Starrett logo looks much better than my logo inside, which is really the featured logo. So I wasn't too uptight about my logo being kind of set back or not being contrasty enough. And as I said in my Instagram comment, a lot of people are going to say, oh, why didn't you put a magnet? Because I don't really want magnets around. There's such a fine gear along the caliper. I don't want magnets attracting powder, grinding powder. I don't want grinding powder anywhere near the caliper because it's just going to get caught up in the gearing and it'll ruin the caliper. So which is also the main reason I have. Oh, tail made it. Bless you, bless you. And which is the main reason I have the lid. It's really just a dust shadow or a dust shroud. And also while it sits on my table near the CNC machine is where I use it mostly, I could just lift the lid off, use it, and then put it right back inside without having to have the magnets pick everything up together.
Super
Thank you.
cute.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.